Well, we've played Mystic Quest.
Yep,
That was a thing we played.
indeed it was.
I hate to say it.
Do you really hate to say it, though?
I really wanted to like it, but that was crap.
I mean, crap is such a strong word.
I could use stronger. Why did we have to play Mystic Quest?
In the end, it wasn't really a game made for people like us.
And does it even belong in the game collection?
That's a tough call, but luckily, I'm on your show today, so technically I don't have to make that decision.
Anyway, I'm sure you've all realized by now that this video is a bit different than my usual format. And those of you rock dwellers who don't recognize my guest, this is SuperDerek from the Game Collection, who has to be the one RPG-centric YouTuber even more obsessive than myself. Say hi, Derek.
Hello.
A few months ago, we did a joint review on the original Shining Force for the Sega Genesis, which you can find by heading on over to Derek's channel and checking that out. I'll include the card link to that right about here. Your other hand, Derek.
Oh, right.
And we thought, for some reason, that Mystic Quest would be the perfect follow-up for that video. We were wrong.
Well, mostly wrong.
Mystic Quest is notorious for being Square's experimental introduction to RPG gaming. Picture a 15-hour Final Fantasy tutorial, only somehow weirder and more terrible than you'd expect. Ironically, Derek and I both embarked on this disappointing journey expecting to uncover an unappreciated gem. Instead, we discovered that all the negative hype that surrounds this particular title is totally justified. That's not to say that the game is all bad.
Of course it wasn't all that bad. There were lots of really neat things that this game did that was ahead of its time, like being able to see enemies in dungeons in lieu of random encounters, so you can clear out a dungeon if you feel like it, and if you have to backtrack during a dungeon, you aren't punished heavily for it because you already cleared a path.
That's like exclaiming, "Oh goody, no punishment," after already having had your fingernails torn off. The battles in this game are excruciatingly dull. And yes, there are visible enemies on the map, but their placement is downright dickish. The game lines up the baddies in tight, unavoidable corridors and heaps them on top of treasure chests. In fact, there's little reason to ever go after the brown chests in the game because you'll use up more resources fighting their guardians than you'd ever recoup from the loot.
I mean, as painful as they could be, dungeon designs were pretty clever overall though, and adding random encounters would have made them unbearable, so fixed enemy positions were definitely the right choice. I mean, they each had themes that made sense for each of the crystals we recovered. The dungeons almost felt like Zelda-type dungeons that used things like bombs and hookshots to traverse.
No argument here. I love the dungeon layouts. Although I could argue that for a quote-unquote beginner's RPG, they were surprisingly complex. Often, the labyrinths begin with a fork and keep on forking until you find yourself backtracking to the beginning to flip the switch needed to progress to the end. It's easy to miss the desirable red chest equipment and event items without a guide, especially if you play like me and are doing your damnedest to avoid unnecessary combat.
But I think what we're kind of not seeing here is that this wasn't made for us JRPG veterans. This was designed to be an introduction for Western audiences not familiar with JRPG mechanics. In fact, it was called Final Fantasy USA in Japan. The game tries to prepare new players of future games by first, of course, decreasing how punishing failure can be. If you die in the game...
When you die.
Yeah, when you die in the game, you can restart the battle immediately without consequence. The game hints at enemy weaknesses to elemental and weapon types, like trees being weak to axes and undead being weak to cure magic, that sort of thing. The game even features invisible enemies at one point to help prepare people for quote-unquote real RPGs with random encounters.
I'm all for the RPG on training wheels approach, but did Square have to be so mean about it? Deaths are so cheap. Mid-game enemies and onward spam status effects like petrification, which Final Fantasy fans know to equate one-hit kills. While player magic is always weaker than physical attacks, unless the enemy has a hidden weakness which can only be discovered through trial and error. Really, the game gives few verbal clues and leaves the rest up to chance player discovery.
Oh yeah, kinda like how the end boss could be KO'd with a cure spell.
Exactly, just like the, wait, what?
You didn't discover that?
What? No!
Yeah, he's really easy. It's actually kind of anticlimactic, actually.
He was a total asshole that kept on slaughtering my party with one-hit smackdowns. I had to fight him like 5 times before I started save scumming just to end my misery.
Oh, well, I guess that kind of sucks. But hey, on the bright side, you experienced the final boss the way I think it was actually intended. The final boss weakness only exists in the US version and didn't actually make it into the European or Japanese releases of the game, so...
Yay, lucky me.
Yeah, look, I get it. The game had some really rough points that I can't ignore, even for being an RPG for beginners. I mean, RPGs were, and still are, renowned for their stories, and what did we get with Mystic Quest? Plot devices so thin and characters so insufferable that you'd swear the writers went on to create Peppa Pig. They even threw in these stupid shrugging animations just to show how little they actually cared about the story. It's like the writers are actually looking at the player and shrugging as if to say, well, you brought this upon yourself for not buying more copies of Final Fantasy IV, so there's nothing we can do to save you now.
Wow, I'm not sure which part of that statement offends me more. The slight towards Peppa Pig with her charmingly dry British humor?
I'm gonna put a mark in the sand for every time I think about cheese.
Or your total immunity to Mystic Quest's goofy charms. Okay, the story isn't unique, but it's not meant to be. It's almost a JRPG parody tailored to clue a new audience on the tropes and cliches that Square had become known for at the time. You're the chosen hero, kinda, and you're suddenly dropped into this globe-trotting quest to save the world from really bad things by uniting the very important elemental crystals. This is clearly Square making fun of themselves. And it's one of the few things I think Mystic Quest did brilliantly. From the unhelpful old man that drops in to leave cryptic instructions, to the ridiculous way that the hero is obviously the underpowered dork that manages to save the world simply by showing up to the fight. It's no accident that all the companions are stronger than the hero. He is literally just some dude picked at random to carry out the prophecy. The entire plot is one slow burn joke that delivers the punchline at the final battle. I loved it.
Wait a second. You loved that piece of crap?
Well, yeah, and those animations, they aren't stupid. They're cartoonish and very appropriate to the over-the-top ridiculous tone of the story. I, for one, am absolutely in love with the funky jig that the hero does when he wakes up at the inn. He's chipper and eager to embark on more adventure. I wish I had that kind of optimism for the journey. And while we're on the topic of things Mystic Quest did right, can I say how much every RPG needs a jump button? Stubborn NPC blocking the path? No matter, jump over them. Like, why did Square incorporate this feature into all their games? It's revolutionary.
Be all of that as it may, it was super frustrating to be that normal dude who did his best to barely keep up with the damage output of his companions. The people who joined Benjamin on his quest easily outclass him in every step, one-hit KOing every enemy while Benjamin takes 2 or 3 hits to tear one asunder. And don't even bother trying to grind him up into usefulness. I cleared every single battlefield throughout the game, and the level ups don't even seem to have much of an effect on his damage output. Not only are the experience points gained pointless, but so is actual in-game currency. What good is gold in the land of plenty, where brown treasure chests replenish every time you leave an area? There's no need to buy anything except for the rare occasion where you need to buy equipment, and even then it costs a pittance. These brown chests are everywhere, and there's never any danger of running out of anything, ever. Even seeds. This game's version of Ether can be purchased by the handful after a single enemy encounter.
Yeah, but on the other hand, free loot. Mystic Quest encourages the player to use up their items. Remember, everything exists in this world only to teach players RPG mechanics and strategies, not to establish a working economy. And as to your other point, Benjamin, I didn't even know that was his name, but okay, is no hero. He's your average kid, just like the intended player of the game. Square crafted this silly adventure where the player is the protagonist of their own Final Fantasy quest. I think that's cute. And besides, those overpowered companions? Hell yeah, more RPGs could benefit from crazy strong axe ladies. That's awesome. So, yeah, okay, I guess you're right. Mystic Quest isn't crap. In fact, I'd probably be in love with it if the battles didn't suck so much butt.
Yeah, the game has a lot of trappings of a great game, but in attempting to make the game accessible, they made the game too easy. Instead of teaching the player how to overcome challenges, it just simply overcame those challenges for you by stuffing your inventory full of items and stuffing your party full of god-tier companions. So after all of this, do you think this is a good introduction to JRPGs?
Oh god, no. I'd still argue that the best way to jump into RPGs is by falling madly in love with one that's both fun and tells an engaging story.
So something like Shining Force then, right?
Hell yeah!